It's January, and that means Pantone's Color of the Year 2024 video. I am starting on this page that I broke by gluing down some twisted paper. Now, this has been sitting in my studio for months and months, and today is the day that I'm going to use it. I'm going to tape off the coil part so that I don't get any of that gunk in there, and I'm giving this an all-over coat of gesso. So if the twisted paper that you have is colored, once you put a coat of gesso on it, it's white and you can use it for any page. I'm using some texture stamps from the Songs of the Sea Stamperia collection. While it's sea themed, you can use these stamps for any page, and I love both of these texture stamps. And I'm stamping with my black archival ink. I want a little bit of interest in the background. I know the colors that I'm going to use are very light, so I'm hopeful that some of this stamping is going to show up at the end. I'm using the archival ink instead of black acrylic paint like you often see me doing because I want this to be a little bit faded, a little bit more faded. And this one is a Harlequin stamp. And again, I'm just adding it to build some interest into my backgrounds. So the color of the year is called Peach Fuzz. And you can go to Pantone's site and see more about this color, but let's get back to the page. So I want to colorize it. Now, I don't have this color in a tube, but I'm going to mix paint. I've tried on a sample, and here is my recipe. I'm going to use alizarin crimson, Naples yellow, and white gesso. Now, I could blend this all together and make an all-over peach fuzz color, but instead I am choosing to mix these paints wet into wet paint on the page. And that's going to give me a little bit more variation because some areas are going to definitely be that peach fuzz color. Some are going to be more alizarin crimson, and some might be more Naples yellow. And I want that. So while I'm going for the Pantone's color of the year, that peach fuzz color, I'm not limiting myself to that. I'm working with other colors that work with it. But if you want it all over peach fuzz, I would mix the paint on the side, get the right shade, exactly what you want by mixing those colors, and then you can use it as a base coat. Now, the texture that I've put on there with the twisted paper and the stamping all shows through. So everything that we've added in the previous layers is shining through, is adding to my finished page. And you can see here where if I want it lighter, I'm adding a little bit more white, but I'm loving that variation. I don't want this to just look flat. Mixing it wet on wet, paint into paint gives you another way of building interest to your page. If it's getting too blended, all you need to do is dry it and then play. I rub the makeup sponge with the alizarin crimson just to bring out some of that texture. This stencil is called Lilacs, and I'm using it just to add some more pattern to the background. Here I'm using the Naples yellow straight up, and I'm putting it on. And what that does in some of these areas that may be a little more pink, it's blending with that. It's just going on top. It's not exactly opaque, and it's making it look more peachy. So I'm liking that look, but I want to lighten this page a little bit. So I'm grabbing some white acrylic paint here, and I'm going to use the same stencil, this lilac stencil, and just add this patterning to the background. I know at this stage that I am going to use a printable that has a flower on it. So having a floral themed background in my mind works. So even though this is a lilac and I could use this as a lilac as a focal image, here I'm just using it for the patterning and the visual texture that it adds. So look at your stencils. How can you use them and maximize them? Absolutely loving this background. So we've got the peach fuzz in there. We've got some of the Naples yellow, the alizarin crimson, and shades and tones in between. If you like the Pantone color of the year, I will have another video coming up. This one using the Pantone color of the year, but going more vintage and using different techniques. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss it. So here is the printable. Now this printable comes from supercoloring.com. If you do a search for daisies, this will be one of the many that come up. And this is available for people to use. And I've resized it with my computer. And now I'm going to cut it out. Now here's a cutting tip. Those middle parts, it's easier to get before you cut the outside part. It gives a little bit more structure to it, holds it together. So the middle parts, I like using an X-Acto knife. Another tip, make sure your blade is sharp. Buy extra blades, swap them out, make your life a little bit easier. So here I'm just using the X-Acto knife and cutting out those middle parts. So where the middle parts come out, that background that we created is going to peek through. This process just takes what it takes, but if you prefer fussy cutting in there with scissors, then that's you do you. So little by little, turn the page, turn however makes it easier to do. And then you can use the scissors for the outside part. Are you someone who likes fussy cutting? Me, not so much. Found another area that I forgot, so grab that X-Acto knife and cut it out. So once that's all cut out, there you see it against my background. I'm loving the look. I'm deciding that I need a little bit more patterning on there, so I grabbed this stamp from the Create Happiness Stamperia stamp set, and I'm putting some alizarin crimson on it. And I'm just going to add that little bit of alizarin crimson to my background, a little bit of that cross hatching in there just to add all the more. So we're building those layers, but I'm sticking to those same colors. I'm not adding too many other things. And here I'm rubbing the alizarin crimson with the makeup sponge on top of that textured, that wrinkled paper twisted paper that I had glued on. And then I'm just edging with the alizarin crimson. Since I have the makeup sponge and it's full of paint, I'm just using it up and just adding some edging here. So there is the flower. So right about now, I just look up and I see this girl. This was a digital stamp that I have in my stash. And I thought, can I combine it? And I kind of like this. So either of these focal images could stand alone, but when I combine it, you're making something new and different and probably one of a kind. So, whether you're combining magazines and printables or napkins and printables, add some variety to your focal images by doing the mix and match. So I know where this girl's going, so I'm gluing her down with fluid matte medium. Now she is just printed on copy paper, so because I know I'm going to paint on it, I want to prepare the surface, so I'm giving it a good coat of the fluid matte medium on top. Once that's dry, I'm going to colorize this girl, and I am just applying a flesh tone here. And this is a craft paint that is 30 years old. It was ceramic coat that I did when I was into folk art painting, but literally it is 20, 30 years old and it's still good and a great way to get those flesh tones. I don't want to have to mix paint. Then I decide I'm going to give this girl some brown hair. If I had gone with blonde, uh, it would have changed the look of the page, but it's an option. So there's lots of variations that you can build in. I think the page would have looked a lot lighter if I had used the yellow. So I'm just using a small round brush, I believe, and just painting this in because I know I'm going to come in, I'm going to do some shading in a bit. To give a little bit more definition to this focal image. Painting in the bow, I don't really want it to stand out. I thought about painting it red, but I'm painting it the Naples yellow. And I painted the lips the alizarin crimson. So again, what's in the background is on the focal image. And here I am doing some shading with the brown. And this just makes our focal image stand out a little bit more. I also apply some of that alizarin crimson to her cheeks to give her some blush. So you'll notice an upcoming. I decide to paint the eyes green because I know the floral that I'm going to use, I have leaves, so I want to introduce that color in a couple places. I am drawing always between the layers. Often I don't capture that on camera because, well, we don't need to see paint dry. So adding a little bit more shading, this time I'm using black. So right now you can see this girl could be just her, put a sentiment on there, and you can call that done. But I'm going to build up my focal image by adding that floral arrangement covering the girl. I just think that looks a little mysterious, a little unique. Again, I'm using my fluid matte medium. Liquitex brand is what I buy. It is, you can use whatever brand that works for you. You can use Mod Podge, Decoupage. There's a brand that you can get at Walmart. I use this one and I save money by buying it in larger quantities, trying to catch it on sales, and then because I know I'm going to use it. So very carefully, I am gluing down each segment of this focal image. Now, if I wanted that flower to be taller, I could have cut the stalk and then when I paint it, cover it up. So you can adjust the height of it. But I left it pretty much as it was from supercoloring.com. And again, I'm sealing it, making it a non-porous surface by using the fluid matte medium. I love that this is black and white, and I could have just left this black and white. We have the girl is colored, but I decided that I wanted to paint it. So here is what I'm doing. I'm applying kind of a glob of um, white gesso to the middle of the petals. And then I'm just getting some Inktense block pigment, making a bit of a pool, and then I'm painting over it. And I play a little bit here. I start with one tone of this peach fuzz coral color, and then I adjust it as I see what's in front of me and as to what I like. At first, I thought I'm going to go really light, really emphasize the peach fuzz part. I do end up with it a bit darker. I could have done something different with each flower. Now, right now, if you're thinking, oh, that's not standing out from the background, you know I'm going to add some shading. You know I'm going to add more color because, of course, you do want your focal image to stand out. Here, I'm just lightening it up. I'm adding some more gesso, adding some highlights. It's a bit of a dance, like I said. You're just testing the waters to see what you like. And then I'm adding more color. So, as I said, it's a dance. You brighten it and lighten it, then you add more color and darken it. So, and you keep doing that till you get what you like. And then I'm going to move on to the other flowers. And here you're not seeing me put gesso on separately. I'm mixing the gesso right with the Inktense block, the ink that I make the puddle, and then putting it on. Either way works. And as I go, I get a better idea of what I like. Using the Naples yellow for the centers. Again, I am sticking to this yellow because I don't want to introduce another color. I realize right now that I missed part of cutting part of it out, so I need to paint that the flesh tone that I've chosen for this girl. And then I'm going to colorize the leaves. And here I'm using Hooker's Green, which is the same green I used in the eyes, but I'm adding a little bit of Naples yellow just to change the tone a bit. It also kind of mutes the color a little bit. And then I'm going to paint the stems with my liner brush. And the secret to using the liner brush is you want to thin the paint a little bit and it'll go on much more smoothly. Once that's dry, I'm doing some shading now on those petals. And I'm using the darker tone, the alizarin crimson on there, or the Inktense block. Really, they're interchangeable. They're both permanent when they're dry. Often I choose to use one or the other based on is it a better match or location? Is it right already on my table? So right away, once I've added this little bit of shading, you can see that those petals are standing out a little bit more. Shading is really key to making your focal images pop. So now I'm just going to speed up the video again because I'm basically doing the same thing to all three flowers and the leaves. Drawing in between, adding more if if I feel the need is there. If you're not already a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button, click on the bell, and select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. If you are a subscriber, thank you so much for watching my channel, my videos. I hope you are learning and loving what you're seeing. You can see these flowers got considerably darker as I progressed. Here I'm using brown to shade the leaves. This is adding a lot of interest to it. Now, there's also, you might be able to see it, there's a lot of texture or wrinkles that when I glued it down, embrace those wrinkles. That's just going to add texture and interest to your leaves or petals without without having to do anything in particular. So now I'm coming in with white on my angle brush and I'm adding some highlights to my focal images. So shading to add the shadows and then highlights with a lighter color. I was very happy to see that what the Pantone color of the year was because while it's one point this wouldn't be a color scheme that would be in my wheelhouse, but it's one that I am thoroughly enjoying and embracing, and you've seen me create with it a lot. I grab my General's charcoal pencil and I'm just sketching around loosely around the petals, just to add a little bit more definition and to make sure that these flowers stand out against pretty much the same color background. But that's the trick. Now, the General's charcoal pencil is not permanent. So if I put wet medium on top of this, if I glued on top of it and did the brush, it would smear. But I know at this stage that I am not putting any more layers on, no more wet layers, so it's a safe bet. So on the beginning layers, I like to use things that are permanent, acrylic paint, Inktense blocks. But on the final layers, I'm not opposed to using Stabilo all pencil, watercolor, the charcoal pencils. And then I'm just edging with the black. This is giving a very soft edging to it. As for a sentiment, I go into my binder and I find a couple sentiments here that I think will go with the visuals that I have. This is from Sentiment Pack number 1. So I put it on my printer, I size it. I think I shrink it down to about 85%. And then here I'm going to bubble cut it, which means leave a white border on it, but you're getting rid of most of the white. Now the rest of this, I am cutting off the excess. I do not throw these out. They go in my plastic envelopes. These measure 9 by 7. I love them. And then I have some ready for next time. So nothing goes to waste. I glue down the saying bloom and grow, and it's crooked. It bugs me, but you know what? I goofed. And there is the finished page using Pantone's Color of the Year, Peach Fuzz, and a few other colors that work with it. Love the stenciling in white. Love the combination girl flower. Love that texturization that I got with the pre-applied twisted paper. What part of this do you like? Would you combine the focal image? Now take the steps that I've shown here, tweak them, make them your own, and go get creative.